purification. How many here are vegetarian? Oh, quite a few. I remember going to yoga groups years ago, and they put a great deal of emphasis on being vegetarian as a means for purification. And I'd say if that was so important, then cows would be holy because they're vegetarian. Right? So, being vegetarian. If you look at our society today, purification is very is a big focus. We're concerned about pollution. We're concerned about what's it called, carbon footprint. We're concerned about ELF for those involved with a lot of computers, or extremely low frequencies. I know when computers first came out, there was a big hoo-ha, about the electromagnetic fields around computers. Now that they have the new flat screen, I don't know if the electromagnetic fields are the same. But we're penetrated by all these different frequencies that pass through us and everything. But it's interesting that society is concerned about pollution and wanting to get rid of it, which is a means of purification. But for the human, the person who's on the path, especially if you enter into the esoteric path, the idea of purification is key. To be a vegetarian is a good thing, but not necessary initially. My teacher was very advanced. He was Asian, and he ate the worst foods coming from where he came from. And when he told me about some of them, because I was a vegetarian, I couldn't believe, like he liked fried pig's ears and a variety of bizarre foods from Asia. But as he made progress on the path and was in contact with, call it the inner master or one of the masters, at a certain point he was told he had to give up all this food. And that was very difficult for him, because he was a food connoisseur. His job had to do with creating flavors for the world. He worked for the second largest flavor company in the world, and he made flavors. He was instrumental many years ago in the Dairy Queen vanilla. They're creating, what's that, surimi, you know, the fake crabfish they call surimi out of Japan? That's his flavor. He beat the Japanese in developing the flavor. So his astuteness as into sense and flavor and food
is it
so
imitation
big.
crab flavor?
Yeah.
Like the one with the red strips?
Yeah.
Whoa. It's good. It is good.
So he's really attached to food. His eye vasana for food was huge. But going over to his house, he would always be cooking. And you would cook with him. And he'd say, oh, chop the onions or chop the lettuce. And as you're cooking, he'd be teaching. Not only just about flavor, but whatever topic he felt like teaching. So he didn't like it when he was told by his master inwardly that he had to give up meat. I was already vegetarian, but his wife wasn't vegetarian, his kid wasn't vegetarian, and they were all meditating for years. And then as things progressed and went deeper and deeper in the meditation, then he was told he had to give up eggs, and he used eggs especially in cooking because it's a coagulant. You can use it in many aspects of cooking. That was the hardest thing, giving up eggs, right? A lot of people don't understand about why to be vegetarian and so. And as he was going deeper and deeper in his meditation, he was cleaning out stuff. And when that caused some I don't want to say disease, but what would you call it? Sickness, I guess. Because of the meat latent within his aura had to be transformed and cleaned out. So for those that are eventually going to go very deep in meditation, it's something you may want to consider. But we have to think of physical purification, which is more difficult, is emotional purification. As the young fellow was talking about Costco and his anger, that relates to emotional purification, getting rid of the anger, transforming it. That has to be a purification. Then there's mental purification. So purification is a big deal for those who want to go deeper in spirituality. But it's not something you can jump into immediately. It's step by step, because I know some people, when I first met them and they came to the group, they were not vegetarian, but then it's step by step. So for myself, I became vegetarian a long time ago, but I ate fish. But I wouldn't eat shellfish, but I had fish, regular fish. But then eventually I was told inwardly I had to cut out. It was on my honeymoon.
Yeah.
During my honeymoon, we had a meditative honeymoon. And a particular individual being said that I had to cut out fish and eggs all at once. Made a bit of a change in our household, but things smoothed out. So, first on vegetarian, why? Why it's. There are a number of reasons why it works out to be positive and to be vegetarian. But again, it doesn't have to be immediate. It depends on how deep you go. Because it's not the meat, it's the aura of the meat that causes the difficulty. When an animal is going to be killed, it knows it's going to be killed. So the adrenalines and the fear of the animal that's about to die permeate in their aura. If you ate old meat, it wouldn't be so bad. But we eat fresh meat. You go to the grocery market and the meat is fresh. So the aura of the fear in the animal is in the meat. You ingest that, the meat part is up, but you're ingesting the aura of the animal that then blends with your aura. I feel like I got something in my glasses. So if you're a businessman, a cold, hard business person, and you want that ferocity, then you have your big steaks, and you have your steaks and everything because you want that aura in you to make you tough and strong and keep that nervous energy going. From the Yoga Sutras, you have 3 qualities of matter. That's an S. Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. This actually means inert, active, and harmonious. In spirituality, the food should be in harmony. You want to attain to harmony inwardly. So the food, if you're a Hare Krishna, they really build up on this a lot, sattvic food. So if you've ever been to the Hare Krishna temple or to Govinda's, the Hare Krishna restaurant, their Indian food is not that spicy. They want to maintain it as sattva. But steak is rajas, or meat is rajasic. And so it's very active. You want to attain an inner harmony, you eventually have to eat harmonious food. But one should not be over-identified that being a vegetarian is a means to spirituality. It's not. It's just part of it. But when most of the advocates for vegetarianism talk, they talk about, being harmless to animals and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's all good. But the deeper meaning has to do with the aura of the animal. In Tibet, when they used to dry the meat, or just like, and then beat it, so it gets dried up. So the aura of the meat is depleted because it becomes dry, dead meat, and you're just eating substance. But in North America, we eat fresh meat. So we're actually eating the aura of the animal in its last seconds of life. And then that permeates into your own aura. That is the reason, and a spiritual aspect, to be vegetarian. So you don't take in all the fear of the animal at its moments of death. It's very subtle, but on a higher degree. Then that substance in your aura feeds negative substance that's already in your aura, because it's based on fear at the moment of death. The animals know it, what's going to happen to them when they get that little bullet in the head that ends their life. They're mooing and all sorts. They've heard all sorts of stories. A long time ago, I used to be in logistics and supply some containers to, I forget the name of the company, but they're the largest turkey manufacturer in Ontario. And there were some pictures up in their lobby about their assembly line and how the baby turkeys come along. And then I didn't ask, but this guy decided to describe it to me. And I can't remember the reason, but got all these little babies chirping, 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 and they're in this little assembly. But then something comes and chops part of their toe and takes out one of their toes off. Why? I don't. And he says, after that, it's funny, they stop chirping. They know things are happening, and that all goes into their aura. Yeah, it really made. When you think about the meat in the food industry, how it works, it's somewhat upsetting. Anyway, but all that stuff goes into one's aura. Right? And then later, as your meditation improves and goes deeper and deeper, then you want to start working on the purification of your astral body. So, everything in the universe is based on these three aspects. Things are either in inert phase, then they get active, and then eventually things can move and become harmonious. That's why, I forget, I think it's Korea that has that symbol, red, white, it's actually the three sattvas, the three gunas. These are called gunas. Three characteristics of matter. So for food, we want to work towards more harmonious food to create a harmonious being, balanced and harmonious. It's hard when you have something that's like this to become something that's like that. But a lot of us vegetarians add spices, so it becomes a little, but it's still not the same. So, with a human being, pardon again my great artwork, my Gumby human being, we have an etheric body, which is very, very close. Sometimes you can see it. Is very, very close to the fit. This etheric body is actually the energy field or vitality field that supports, it permeates. I can't draw permeate. It permeates the entire physical body. It actually supports the whole physical body. Right? In martial arts and kung fu, some of the secrets were, if you could hit a certain point on a person, it disrupts this etheric body and the person will collapse. Because the etheric body is that which support. It's like if you have a wheel and you take air and you pump it up, blows up. The air is what supports the wheel. It's the etheric body what supports the physical body. Then you have an astral body, but it's more not as defined. So when you go to the psychic fair and the person reads your aura, and it's all different colors, that's related to your astral body, your moods. So if you're in a dark mood, you've got a deep red or a dark brown or colored aura. Or if you're in a happier mood, more greeny or yellowy, etc., etc. Then you have your soul body, which is very subtle. Right? We're at the center. But it's within this astral body, which is related to our emotions, our happinesses, our sadness, the difference between happy and sad. One day I'm happy, next day I'm sad. All the different emotions of the human being, the fears, the jealousies, the pains, everything is within this astral body. And actually within that astral body, we looked at those other diagrams, there's all these different vortices, depending on who and what you are, relative, that are conditioning you. This has to be purified. But the trouble is with this body, because it's not clearly defined, so the difficulties that are there are more like fog. They're more difficult to understand. Just like when you're in a fog, you can't see clearly, it's hard to see them clearly. Then when you come to the mental body, which is outside mental, you have more clear forms, what they call thought forms, right? That you've built up related to your own self, right? You create a certain type of thought form. Oh, I'm a good Christian. You have a certain thought form built up based on your religion, or I'm a good Jewish person, or whatever, or I'm a good Islamic person. You build up a particular thought form. If you're a Jewish person, I have to wear a little cap, or I have to wear this. It's a thought form that's created. It has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with the social group you belong to. But they're in your aura. To meditate, to become awakened, these have to be all changed and broken down. So to be a vegetarian doesn't do it. It helps eventually, but initially it doesn't do it. It's more important to try and understand what is in your astral body and what thought forms control you. What are you controlled by? We see a lot of that in social media today when they talk about the government, the power of the government, controlling this, controlling that, or you work in a corporation and you can only do certain things. Corporations have huge thought forms. Everything that exists, the Buddha always said, everything that exists has nama rupa, name and form. But what we have to understand is what is the form of our personality. We have a physical form, and we express certain aspects of our physical form through how we dress, comb our hair, everything. But our personality has a form, a particular thought form. We have to get in touch with every aspect of our being. And the difficulty here is, sometimes when you meditate, you see something about you don't like. It can be a shock. Some scar we talked about before opens, and you see something about yourself, and that scares a lot of people, and they don't want to go deeper. True meditation is to try and perceive every aspect of our being, physical, emotional, and mental. And that is the essence to what we have to purify. The soul, on its higher plane, we don't have to worry about. As we purify and transform ourselves and align with our soul, that's what we have to do. Any questions on that part?
In this work, is there a way to get help on top of meditation, on top of personal meditation? Can we ask for help?
Of course. Right.
From whom?
Well, you have to go to the help number.
Well, with group work.
I'm sorry, what?
With group work.
Right.
The master talks about, you get help from your help.
Right. So, therefore, like we were talking before, in this cusp age, in the work of the Tibetan master, is to develop group work, so that you have a group of people to also try and help. Because if a group is working, but that's not easy either, because in order to do group work, you have to develop some part of a center of awareness, because you have to be open to what's going on in the group. If you're closed, then you can get fearful, because people don't want to look at different parts of their being. In another book we've been studying online for the last year, I guess, for those that are here, they're on this book called Glamour, A World Problem. Glamour, and we'll talk about, is related to the astral body, that we have particular glamours about ourselves. Oh, a glamour, for instance, thinking that you're much better than what you truly are, that I'm an enlightened being. You build up self-aggrandizement. You build something into yourself that's not true, but you believe it's true. No one else does, right? Or, oh, I'm not worth anything. I just can't do this. I'm just the opposite, right? It's also a glamour, right? It's not true. It's some vortex within your astral body that has this feeling. Were you asking a question? No, I thought I saw a hand go up and stretching, I guess. But there's a section in this book near the end where we were reading about a week ago, and it'd be nice to find it, but it talks about trying to overcome these difficulties: anger, jealousy, envy, arrogance, greed, these different glamours that plague humanity. And one of the things the Tibetan master points out is sometimes you see it in yourself, but you're not yet willing to face it. Oh, I'm really greedy? I didn't know that. I didn't think that was, no. It's almost like, when you find out you're an alcoholic, what's that called? Denial. You go through a period of denial, right? And sometimes that's when you back away from it, because you can't face the truth about yourself, right? Or I'm fearful. Right. I was watching a Kung Fu movie, and the Kung Fu teacher jumped up on a ledge, and started running on the ledge, but the student stopped and looked down, and the Kung Fu teacher said, "Are you afraid? Fear is just an emotion. You're happy, that's an emotion. You're sad. Fear, just an emotion. Pass it, jump up, and run along the edge with me. Fear is an illusion. It's a glamour." And the student was like, because there are 6 floors above the where the Kung Fu guy is just running along the edge, laughing. He didn't think about the fact that he's 6 stories above the ground, but the student was fearful. These are glamours that have to be overcome. Fear is an illusion. Who is fearful? So, purification, in fact, equals let's see. Purification equals renunciation. What you're afraid of, or what you're jealous of, or what have you, you have to renounce it. That means that you are identified with something and therefore hold on to it. Like that student that didn't want to jump up on the ledge and run with the Kung Fu guy on the ledge 6 floors, but he held on to his fear. The teacher had no fear, he had let go of his fear, therefore wasn't afraid of losing his balance. Right? So purification has to do when you find some difficulty within yourself, like anger, you have to find how to renounce it, to give it up, to let it go, which is not easy because you may have had the anger or fear or jealousy going back many lives. So if you start to purify the physical body, that starts to help. But then we start to center, like we talked before, the flame in the heart, radiating that flame with the Om. So sending out higher forces to somehow start to counteract some of these different aspects of ourselves over time, to create more harmony within. Again, part of the glamour is we think we're harmonious inside. Many of us don't even want to admit that we're not. So this is the first stage, is by sounding the Om, especially in a group formation, having to impact on this astral body, starting to transform it step by step by step, slowly. Might take several years. But that's the first aspect, to start and bring in a sattvic aspect to your being. The difficulty is we're trying to bring down a force of harmony, right? The harmonious one, but it's got all this blockage here. And sometimes you'll have a very good meditation and feel in harmony. But then you go to work, and before you know it, everything's chaos again. But sometimes we're so asleep, we don't see the chaos because we're so used to it. We don't realize all the impacts of life on the astral body. Our astral body takes a lot of impacts. Why do you think some of the movie stars, singers, divas have such chaotic lives, have so much difficulty with, and then end up in drugs and everything? Because they have so many people worshiping them. It means there's a lot of impacts on their astral body, and depending on their karma and the quality of their astral body, whether they can take these impacts. Some can, some can't. See, many stars male and female having a lot of difficulties, ending up on drugs and things like that because of these impacts from all the people. When you think about somebody, you're actually sending them a certain, how would you call it, expression of energy from you to them. We don't see it. We see ourselves physically. We don't see the movement of energy. So if you think positively about somebody, you're sending a positive force. You think negatively, you're sending a negative force. If you could see it, certain things like anger and those type of, actually have a certain poison in them and actually affect the other person. So we go into our society, it's full of emotional pollutants. Why did the yogis in ancient times even hide out in caves and jungles? And they wanted to get away from all this. They knew what was happening. It's not just to be alone. They wanted to get away from all these impacts. That's pretty scary. I don't know, can you read about this kind of thing anywhere? Nobody talks about this. But that's what it is. And we have to clean this up. Trouble is, you start cleaning this out, then you become overly sensitive to the outside world. And that's why you don't have masters walking around with humanity, or even very, very advanced initiates walking around. It's too difficult for them. Has anybody, oh, I gotta sit down. Has anybody ever read The Initiate in the New World? By, what was his name? The Initiate in the writer, I forget. Anyways, he's dead. His daughter lives in Toronto, but he's dead. He's British. When he first published the books, he didn't put his name in, he didn't want his eye. He just put by a pupil. Anyways, there's a fairly advanced initiate in the 1930s, and he came to Boston, and he started an occult group. And they would meet weekly or whatever. And then after about several months, he disappeared. He didn't say anything, he just disappeared. Several months later, one or two of the members of that group were given an invitation to come to London to a special occult group. And when they got there, their teacher was there. And where did you go? He says his guru had called them back to the Himalayas because he was taking too much impacts from the society. It was affecting him too much. And they saw a danger and had to pull him out so he could go into retreat and clean out again because he's absorbing a lot of things. Very bizarre idea. The Master Kuthumi was one of the founders of the Theosophical Society. He was in physical incarnation in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. And he was asked, are the masters, are you guys perfect? Are you never wrong? And he says, well, we're in meditation in the higher planes, we can see clearly. But when we come down and have to be in the physical and enter into a society, because of the astral, he called it miasma, and fogs and glamours, even we make mistakes because it even impacts our judgment. So we exist in an astral polluted environment. We're trying to change the physical polluted environment by reducing, carbon emissions. Just think, if this was 1950 and we were all here, there'd probably be 10 smokers in here. If you're older like myself, I remember going into a restaurant. I never smoked, it always bothered me. But you go in and the amount of smoke, my parents smoked. For some reason I didn't smoke. But people changed that. It took years. and only in Canada. You go to the States, there's still a place, but it's getting better. You go to Europe and places, or Asia, they smoke everywhere. So changing the physical. But we have to learn in time to change the astral pollutions in our society. But first we have to do it with ourselves. More and more people change their astral body and purify it, then they'll have an impact on society, and society in time will change. It's a big job, but we have to do ourselves first. So how do we do that? So first we have to work towards know thyself, or, which comes from Hermes Trismegistus, or from the ancient yoga Atma Vichara, which means self-inquiry. We have to learn about self-inquiry. Who am I? So, the first step on that is self-observation. So we had a very good story this morning about somebody working and fighting with somebody at Costco, right? And then how he observed himself and the reactions, right? The trouble is with self-observation is it's passive. You see it, you observe it, you take note. You have to do more. You make it more visible. When you make it more visible, it loses some strength.
So can I ask a question to follow up that?
I'm sorry?
Would that be, to follow up your point, would that be when you are having an interaction or an encounter and then you walk away from it and you think about, oh, I should have said this or I should have done that?
Right.
So that would be your opportunity to sort of actively self-observe?
Of course, yes.
Okay.
Right, because the question is when you've done, like you have an interaction with somebody
Mhm.
and you're not happy with the outcome.
With what you say or what you
What you-
didn't say.
Right, let's assume you're not happy, then you question what inside, why did I answer in that way? I should have answered in this way. It would have been much better. But why did I answer in this particular way? Then you have to look to try and analyze. It could be a certain karmic relation that the individual that you were dealing with is a cat and you're a mouse, karmically. And you responded as a mouse because of the samskaras that are built up from that karmic relationship. Again, it's mechanical.
Okay, so how do you close the loop?
Okay, so, through observing it, analyzing it. So when you analyze, so when you go through the situation, it's on the astral plane. And it's full of fog, and you generally can't see correctly what you're doing. When you analyze, you move into the mental plane. You pull yourself above it to a higher level. So then you analyze the situation, and you look at it, and you think about it. And then you can picture in your mind that individual and what you wanted to say. And then when you go back to that individual, you can be mentally more prepared. You may still stumble and fall down into the same trap before, but eventually not.
What if you don't even have a chance to go back to that individual?
Well, then that's small karma and you pass it. But you can still learn from it,
No.
because there's going to be other people, individuals, that'll be relatively the same. Because until you understand the situation, it'll repeat and repeat and repeat. So self-observation or self-inquiry, and write it down. And then the question you can ask at a later, you need more teaching to go deeper. You need to know, where is the source of your reaction? This diagram has 5 aspects of our being, from an intellect and the emotions. In Sanskrit, you have the karmendriyas and gyanendriyas, which relate to our instincts and our movement. So for instance, in this, what we call it the movement center, not only am I using my movement center to move my arm or to write, but the movement center is in charge of how the blood moves through our body. I'm breathing as I talk, I'm not thinking about it. So what's it called, anatomic, no, what do you call it, this self-breathing? You breathe automatically, right, without thinking. It's all, and then our thoughts, it moves all of our thoughts also. So then, when you start to analyze a situation, the more mechanical it is, the more it's only motion. Mind is asleep, everything's asleep, just the motion, just like you breathe daily, regularly, is functioning. So then you have to analyze where it came from. Understand the components of each of these. That's a little too deep for this particular venue. But each aspect of this represents, excuse me, a particular aspect of our being. So through self-observation, we begin the analysis and try to determine who it was within me that responded in that way. Did I respond from fear? Did I respond, I was being arrogant? Was I being jealous of someone or envious? You have to determine how you were responding. And then you can analyze it and observe when you're dealing with other people if you're responding in the same way. And is it repeating?